In 1921, an entire American neighborhood was burned to the ground. Hundreds may have died. Planes reportedly dropped fire from the sky. And for decades, schools barely mentioned it. This wasn't overseas. This happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what America buried for over 100 years is terrifying.
So, imagine waking up to find your entire world, your home, your business, your whole community, just completely obliterated. And not by some foreign enemy, but by your own neighbors. Now, imagine the rest of the world pretending it never even happened for 100 years. Well, this is the terrifying, buried truth of one of the darkest moments in American history, and honestly, the incredible story of what rose from its ashes. Welcome to The Explainer. Right, so in 1921, planes actually dropped fire from the sky. They dropped explosives. Men fired rifles from above. And we're not talking about a battlefield in Europe here. This happened on American soil, right in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thousands of armed rioters stormed a thriving neighborhood, turning it into an absolute war zone. 35. I want you to really think about that number. That is how many entire city blocks were burned to the ground. Over 1,200 homes were completely destroyed in a matter of hours. Families were literally running for their lives through burning streets. A vibrant, bustling community was reduced to flat, smoking rubble. Now, after a domestic attack of this magnitude, you would expect massive investigations, right? But instead, there was just this dark conspiracy of silence. Like, where did the official records go? Official city files simply vanished. Newspaper archives containing the very articles that sparked the violence were destroyed. It was as if America tried to erase the massacre from history itself. But to understand why it was erased, we first kind of have to understand what was destroyed. Section 1. A city within a city. The wealth of Greenwood. So let's travel back in time. This was the Greenwood District, founded in 1906 by a visionary named O.W. Gurley. It wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a fully self-sustaining, high-end economic ecosystem spanning nearly 40 square blocks. Because of segregation, Black residents couldn't shop in the wider white community, so they built their own. And man, they built it beautifully. We're talking about luxury hotels, banks, pharmacies, and dozens of doctors and lawyers. There were even residents who owned their own private planes. The prosperity was so undeniable that Booker T. Washington himself coined a phrase for it. He called it the Negro Wall Street of America. It became this glowing, undeniable national symbol of the American dream, achieved despite the crushing grip of segregation. It proved, without a doubt, that a new world was possible. But how exactly did they build this immense wealth? Well, consider the circulation of a single dollar. In Greenwood, a dollar stayed within the community, passing from the grocer to the barber to the banker for nearly 11 months before it ever left. To put that into perspective, today, the modern average for that demographic is just 6 hours. This extreme economic retention, this powerful loyalty and unity, is what multiplied their wealth exponentially. But here's the tragic reality. As Greenwood grew in affluence, it also grew as a target. The summer of 1919, known as the Red Summer, saw a massive rise in racial terror across the country, really fueled by anxieties over Black success. Tulsa was no different. It was this incredible concentration of wealth surrounded by rising white supremacy's jealousy. It was a tinderbox. So what was the spark? Section 2. The Spark and the Massacre, Triggering Violence. Let's do a forensic breakdown here. On May 31st, 1921, a 19-year-old Black shoeshiner named Dick Rowland boarded an elevator operated by a 17-year-old white girl named Sarah Page. We don't know exactly what happened, but she screamed and he ran. By the next afternoon, the local newspaper ran a highly incendiary, completely false headline, essentially calling for a lynching. That evening, a massive armed white mob gathered at the courthouse. A group of Black men, including armed World War I veterans, arrived to protect Rowland. Then, a single gunshot echoed through the crowd. And that was it. Once that shot rang out, the white mob, completely outnumbering the residents, stormed past the railroad tracks directly into Greenwood. The survivor accounts are absolutely harrowing. One recalled, "The bullets were just raining down over us. They looted businesses, shot people in the streets, and literally set fire to the curtains of family homes to make absolutely sure they burned to the ground." It's just a stark, heartbreaking reminder of the tragic fragility of physical infrastructure. I mean, think about it. It took 15 years of meticulous, grueling community building to create the empire of Black Wall Street. It took just 2 days of martial law, violence, and fire to turn it to ash. By the time the National Guard intervened and the smoke cleared, Greenwood was in ruins, and its survivors were forced into tent cities. Section 3. The Conspiracy of Silence. Erasing the Massacre. Now, the destruction of the buildings was only the first part of the crime. The second was the systematic historical erasure that immediately followed. Because how do you hide a massacre? It requires highly organized erasure. First, official police and city records just magically disappear. Next, you label it a race riot to shift the blame, making it sound like both sides were somehow equally at fault. You keep it out of school textbooks for an entire century. And horrifyingly enough, the only real records kept by the attackers were racist souvenir photo postcards traded among the mob, mocking the destruction. Which brings us to a really haunting, unresolved question. The official death toll recorded at the time was just 2 victims. 2. But eyewitnesses reported seeing trucks loaded with bodies being dumped into rivers and mass graves. Modern historians estimate the actual number is closer to 300. So, where are they? Section 4. Unearthing and Rebuilding. The Modern Blueprint. Today, investigators are finally using ground-penetrating radar in places like Oakland Cemetery to find soil anomalies, and they're using DNA to match remains with living descendants. But as they unearth the physical past, modern visionaries are unearthing the economic spirit of Greenwood. This rebuilding relies on powerful modern concepts like affirmative development. Coined by modern real estate titans like Don Peebles, this is a strategy where developers build world-class projects but guarantee that up to 50% of the contracts go to minority-owned businesses. The new Black Wall Street isn't just one physical neighborhood anymore, it's a systemic strategy of ownership. This modern blueprint is really distributed across 3 key steps. First, they're building new physical hubs, like the massive new Black Wall Street market in Stonecrest, Georgia, which houses over 100 minority-owned businesses. Second, they're owning the code. Take Topia Wanatona, for example, who bootstrapped the scheduling software Calendly into a $3 billion empire. Third, they're controlling capital and global energy sectors. It's essentially a decentralized approach to the original Greenwood vision. And the scale of this new wealth, it is staggering. $10 billion. That is the estimated net worth of Robert F. Smith, the wealthiest Black person in America. Through his firm, Vista Equity Partners, he manages over $100 billion in assets. He realized that modern wealth isn't just about real estate anymore. It's about buying the digital infrastructure of the entire world. In 1921, a mob could literally burn down a street of shops. They could destroy physical wealth. But in 2024, modern pioneers own the software that powers hospitals, schools, and governments. This new distributed economic model is completely fireproof. You simply cannot burn it down. The tragedy of Tulsa was a masterclass in how power can be violently stolen and erased. But the legacy of Black Wall Street, that is a masterclass in resilience. It shows us that a blueprint, once created, can never truly be destroyed. So I leave you with this. When we finally unearth the forgotten truths of the past, what kind of empires will we build from the ashes? Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.
Today, Tulsa continues trying to remember what was lost. Memorials now stand where entire neighborhoods once burned. But one question still remains. Why was this history buried for so long? And how many other forgotten stories are still hidden beneath America's surface? This is Buried States. Subscribe for America's darkest hidden history.